go out to the guest line right now and welcome in Bobby Carpenter, who won a national championship at Ohio State. Now does a great job locally on 97.1 The Fan, and also you can hear him nationally on Sirius XM, and he's kind enough to join us right now. Bobby, did you get any sleep last night? I saw you were running around that field with James Laurinaitis celebrating a national championship.
Yeah, not as much as I would have liked. I do AM radio in Columbus, Ohio, starting at 6 on 97.1 The Fan. So I got up about 5:30, scraped it off after going to bed at probably 4:15, and was able to handle that. And then I got to deal with that at 11:30 flight, the beautiful and efficient Hartfield Airport, which I don't know if you flew out today. I mean,
I did.
I was there 2.5 hours before. I'm lucky I made my flight. I mean, my goodness. I'm not sure who handles the logistics for those folks, but I feel like we might be able to do a little better job.
So I got at the airport at 5 in the morning, and I had TSA pre-check, and even then, like, it was only a 20-minute wait. But when I landed, and I landed by like 9 o'clock this morning here on the East Coast, I saw videos, hour and a half, 2-hour wait at TSA pre-check out the door. And I never thought, Bobby, that Atlanta would be cold. Jeez Louise, like 20 degrees is nothing to me here in New York. That was a different cold that I felt in Atlanta the last 24 hours I was there.
Yeah, because you're expecting it to be warm. The expectation that you didn't bring like all of your trappings for cold weather. I mean, I brought a coat. I'm like, all right, I'll leave in the hotel most of the time. I wore that son of a gun every time I went outside. I didn't bring a hat. I didn't bring gloves. Like, I didn't bring any of the other stuff that I really needed. And man, you would be downtown and that wind would hit you in the face and it felt terrible.
So Bobby Carpenter is here with us. When you look back at this Ohio State story, clearly it's the Ryan Day story. But from a player perspective, there's two iconic moments from this run. The decision to throw the ball and the catch by Smith down the right sideline to secure the national championship. And then in the round prior, the fourth down strip sack touchdown by Jack Sawyer. What to you is the defining play when you look back at this run, where if you have a championship DVD, that's going to be the first play that people think about?
I think the Sawyer play, but it's an interesting question because Jack made an unbelievable play against Michigan on a goal line stand and, has an interception, runs it out to the 15, but like that is lost to the annals of history, to the sands of time, because you don't win the game. And so I think the more impactful play, the bigger game, it almost felt like, was the Texas game and what Jack was able to do, strip sacking his former teammate Quinn Ewers, scooping him up himself, running all the way back. And in a game that was a one-possession game on the 1-yard line, it ends up being a 2-score victory. That only gets told if you're able to win that final game. And so I think that is the more impactful play, the one that people will remember. But it needed the Jeremiah Smith. It needed the Will Howard over the top 60 yards on 3rd and 11, in the clutch, to be able to secure that victory so that play ultimately mattered and was remembered the way that it should be.
How about the game last night? Because, man, right before you joined us, I was saying Notre Dame comes out swinging to perfection, and they take off 10 minutes off the clock. Then it looked like this was going to be Notre Dame, Alabama from years ago in the national championship with how dominant Ohio State was. But that ended up being a game late, and ultimately, like we're talking about, the aggressiveness by Chip Kelly and Ryan Day was on full display, and Howard found Jeremiah Smith for that big victory as obviously Ohio State's national champions.
Yeah, the Emeka Egbuka fumble kind of opened it back up for Notre Dame. And I give Marcus Freeman a lot of credit, man. He's a really good coach, former teammate of mine, a really great guy. And you can tell how much his players care about him, how much they believe in him. They kept fighting. I mean, they were down, 27 or 28-7. Talk about winning the middle 8. If Notre Dame scores, they have the ball for 10 minutes. But outside of that, they only possessed the ball for 18 minutes the rest of the game. So after that opening drive, I mean, they were behind the 8 ball. Ohio State was controlling it. They were 9-12 on 3rd down. They go score, 3 and out, score, 3 and out, end of half. Ohio State gets the ball, scores. And, they're driving again. And, the Emeka Egbuka fumble, I think, kind of opened it back up. Those guys believed in Marcus, and that allowed them to get back in the game. And I think it was a fitting ending, for a coach that, he talks about wanting to be more aggressive, leave no doubt, knock them out. It's his mantra and that team's mantra moving forward. To be able to be stuck with a 3rd and 11 I mean, I'm like, I'd run it out. Let's run the deep comeback. We've been running it. It's effective. They can't stop it. You know what? And he said, hey, let's go for it. We've got the best receiver on the planet and a quarterback that, even though people don't think is very good, just set Ohio State completion percentage record and broke C.J. Stroud's, completed 13 straight. I mean, it looks pretty damn accurate to me, Zach. So that's the play that ultimately sets it up with a guy that, people claimed couldn't get it done, throwing to a true freshman who might end up, one day being a Gold Jacket member in Canton.
Bobby Carpenter here with us. I remember talking to you after Ohio State lost to Michigan, and you were still supportive of Ohio State keeping Ryan Day. Now, 6-7 weeks later, they're national champions after blowing out Tennessee, just totally taking care of Oregon. The Texas game was close, but they won it. They win the national championship last night. I know that you like Ryan Day a lot, but what are you feeling today, seeing the narrative really shift and go from down and out to now being on the top of the college football world that Ryan Day is?
It's a little bit of the era that we live in society, where you're either the best or the worst. It's completely binary. Like, you can't have a measured opinion on anything where, hey, I think Ryan Day is a really great football coach. You're going to have a hell of a time replacing him with someone better. However, he needs to find a way to beat Michigan. Like, those two things can both be true. And like, he has an issue with that. It's something that's going to come up again next year, and I'm hoping that he's able to get that corrected. I think he learned a lot with this, but then you go and see an epic run. I mean, one of the most difficult runs you'll ever find, a 4-game stretch. This Ohio State team beat 5 top 5 teams this year. You see the interaction with the players in him. And that's the thing. I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to see at the end of the game. And I was on the field, so I didn't necessarily get a full view of it. I'm going to go back and rewatch the game. But, I mean, those guys picking him up and passing him around.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think that he sees her, crossing the Rubicon, marching in. Like, I mean, they had the palm leaves out and everything. So, like, that connectivity they had. And there's always going to be people that they live on Misery Island, man. They're the grievance place. They're like, hey, does this national championship have an asterisk to it? Was it an unfinished national title? Because it doesn't have a Big Ten championship. It doesn't have a bit one over Michigan. I'm like, man, you guys go live in that disconnected reality. This was the best team in college football. I don't think there's any debating about it with who they beat, how they looked, and the manner of which they went. And if you want to keep talking about hot seats and Misery Island, like, nothing cools off a hot seat like a Gatorade bath. So let's just enjoy it, and let's realize that this guy's one hell of a football coach and a really great man as well.
You know what? It's so funny you say that, because one of my close friends attended and graduated from Ohio State, and we were getting into it this morning. And I'm not usually a Ryan Day defender, and I've had my fun hand up at his expense, but I was defending him today, and it's like the fact that I needed to defend him to Ohio State fan, but he said to me, Bobby Carpenter, am I super happy we won the college football playoff? Of course. Am I excited about the future? Absolutely. But the game has changed. The thought of Ohio State making the Rose Bowl pre-2014 with the loss to Michigan is laughable. How would Duke fans feel if John Shire never won a game against UNC until somehow won March Madness after 5 years? Happy but jaded. I'm like, I'm talking to an Ohio State fan. I couldn't believe that was a text that I was getting today from my buddy.
I mean, listen, man, like, go get a bowl of ice cream and just enjoy the day. Like, I mean, can we not have any nice things? And here's the thing with this, and I've talked to a lot of people about it. And listen, I'm from the state of Ohio. I grew up here. I went to Ohio State. I understand what it means. I have 3 pairs of gold pants. I've got 1 national championship ring. And I said on Get Up with Greeny, I was like, I would trade one of these gold pants, which would be like sacrilege, for another national championship, being the best in the country. And it's really not even a tough choice. But the game can still mean as much emotionally. And this is what we're worried about, Zach, with this 12-team playoff, that the regular season wouldn't matter as much. Well, hell, it looks like it still matters a hell of a lot to a lot of people. Like, emotionally it matters. But the reality is the gravity of the game, of what it means to, with the respect of the entirety of a season, it's changed. And it honestly changed more than 10 years ago when you went to the divisions and you went to a Big Ten championship. It wasn't the last game anymore. And then all of a sudden, you have a 4-team playoff. And so you could maybe get in even without winning that, winning the Big Ten. And now, you're getting in without winning your conference, and you go win a national championship. So yes, that game will mean a lot emotionally to a lot of people, me being one of them. But we also have to look at it. It is a little bit more of an NFL model now. And, I mean, you'd rather have your team playing the very best the last 4 weeks of the season or 4 games of the season than maybe winning a rivalry game, no matter how painful that might be.
No one questioned the talent of this team, but you wonder if they could come together and do what they did last night. Looking back at it, do you think they needed to lose to Michigan to get the best out of this team? Because it did feel as if we just saw a different gear from that team once they did lose to Michigan and what we got to see in those 4 games in the college football playoff.
You know, people talk about leadership, and I get a chance, I'll do some speaking on it and developing culture and all these things. And they just, what is culture? Well, I don't want a bad culture, but I can't really define how to get a good one. Like, you just know it when you see it. And as much as the loss to Michigan, I think was a huge part of it. I think the main part of that loss to Michigan was the criticism that Ryan Day had become publicly from outside of the Woody Hayes and really, not really nationally, but locally, statewide, of how much people were leaning in on him. And those players loved the guy, man. They absolutely love that man. And I think that there was a galvanization that happened where, like, listen, our coach isn't perfect. He came out, we had this players only meeting plus the head coach. And I think he was probably brutally honest about his shortcomings and some of the things that happened. And the players were talking about what they could do. And then you saw them all like get in line behind the guy. And to a man, after every game, you heard those guys defend their coach. And I think that the loss to Michigan maybe revealed that, but even more so, it was the level of public criticism that he was receiving that I think got everybody behind him. And it was as much, let's win it for each other as let's win it for him.
Yeah, I'll let you run in a few seconds. Bobby Carpenter here with us the day after Ohio State wins the national championship. You said about my observations being on the field last night as the game was ending. Like, usually, right, you're a player, you win a game like that, you win a national championship, you're running to another player. I thought it'd speak volumes how not only just any player, but your big-time players were running over to Ryan Day and going out of their way to basically say the monkey's off his back, coach, you did it. Because sometimes you could have a player's coach and that player's coach could be a doormat. It's cool to see a player's coach that also has the respect of his players, and they kind of gave, the rest of the college football world the middle finger last night.
I think it's a very accurate assessment of it. Those guys leaned in. I won a national championship, and we hugged Tress, but it wasn't like that. I mean, Urban won one. I was there for that. My brother was on the staff. There was none of that going on, at least, especially not to that degree. And so to see that with Ryan and how passionate it was, and it almost was a little bit, and Zach, you're old enough to remember this. I don't know if you remember the Niners Super Bowl that they won in '94, where Steve Young was like kicking the monkey off his back, and like his teammates are going over. And it's a guy that you knew was great, and you were just waiting for him to get that validation publicly so that everybody else could finally accept his greatness as well. And I was like, man, that just kind of what it reminded me of, because he was following Urban and how he's just not Urban Meyer. I'm like, that's fine. That he's not Urban, and you don't want him to try to be Urban because that's not who he is. And so it felt like that proverbial monkey was lifted, and those guys were just trying to lift him up as much as possible.
Now, could we just get real serious here for a second? You win a national championship, and we can't even get someone to drive a golf cart properly? That video last night.
I mean,
it was crazy.
How many times, and I'm not a huge golfer, I probably golf 10 times a year, maybe 12. The amount of times I ride in a golf cart with my one leg hanging out the side. I mean, Ryan, when you talk about celebration to getting a foot amputation or crushing your foot against that wall, I mean, my goodness. And then the best part, she just got up and walked off. Like, hey, we just ditched this car. Like, all right, we're out of here. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, that was unbelievable. It was Austin Powers at its finest.
It was crazy. I couldn't believe that when I saw it this morning. Before we let you run, I got to squeeze in one NFL point. Nothing's official, but I know you got drafted and you played for the Cowboys. They got rid of McCarthy. We know that. We'll see where he lands. A lot of people like me thought it was going to be Kellen Moore, and now there's been a big push for Brian Schottenheimer, and it's feeling today that that's the expectation of what's going to happen in Dallas. I don't really see going from McCarthy to Schottenheimer how the Cowboys get better. And it feels as if this is a kind of another Jerry Jones puppet master type of move. What would your reaction be if Schotty got the job?
I like Brian personally. I mean, he's a great guy. I've never played for him, but I've gotten to know him socially, and I know my dad always loved his dad, Marty, and what he was about. And I think this is kind of middling it. He hired Jason Garrett before. He wanted a coach with experience the next time. So he didn't want quite the learning curve. So that's why he goes with Mike McCarthy, who'd won a Super Bowl. And maybe he's not the great innovator, but he's a leader and he's experienced. Well, that obviously he gave you good, but he didn't give you great. Kellen Moore's a really young coach, and I think Kellen Moore will make a really nice head coach one day. But there's still some seasoning that probably needs to happen. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Jerry Jones is seasoned out. He's 82 years old. For all intents and purposes, Zach, this is probably his hope. I think he's probably the last head coaching hire he makes. If you're hiring another coach, in 3 years, that's not a great thing. And those sands are dripping out of the hourglass for Jared. He wants to win a Super Bowl more than anything. And I think Brian Schottenheimer is kind of middling it a little bit. Yeah, he's never been, a head coach before, but he's grown up around the NFL. I mean, he's been in it. I mean, he was one of the hot head coaching candidates when I was coming out back in 2006. Been around the league. He's got tons of contacts. He can build a great staff. He's got that pedigree with his father. And so maybe this is that attempt to kind of get a guy who, it's a first-time head coach, but it's a guy who's been around a ton and understands the game and will hopefully be able to shepherd that team back to where they need to be. But I mean, to be honest, they've got cap issues. They've got some personnel issues. They've got more issues than just the head coach. That's for sure.
There's no question about that. He is Bobby Carpenter, host of 97.1 The Fan in Columbus. Does a great job, Sirius XM radio as well. And is a former Ohio State Buckeye, as a linebacker, won a national championship. And I know he's in a good mood today. Bobby, really appreciate you carving out some time on the Limited Sleep.
Hey, my pleasure. Anytime.